Great. So hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is our third week doing these live roundtable sessions with Fringe North. Today, I am here with Tova, who is, she has a long history with Fringe North. Her current title, she is the president of Fringe North, and also, is it community outreach? Community engagement. One of those. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, Garrett. Yeah, it's funny at this stage because I've worn so many hats with Fringe, and I think folks who've been kind of around and part of the Fringe community since the early days will know what I'm talking about. But currently, I'm the president of the board. And because I hold this kind of connective piece as well between you folks who are the team on the ground planning the Awesome Summer Festival and the board and what we're trying to do to support that work, I kind of occupy the territory of community engagement, if you will. So I did take on that little bit of a role as well this summer. As per usual, I'm wearing multiple hats, but technically speaking, those are the two areas that I'm really focused in.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. This is going to be a fantastic opportunity to talk a little bit more in detail about the festival and the history of the festival, and a little bit from your perspective on the board side of things. I guess before we go any further, I will. My name is there, but I'm Garrett Ryan. I am with Artist Relations this year for Fringe North, and I'm so happy to be back today. I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation. So, first things first. This is a very broad question, but I'm just very interested to know the sort of background of Fringe North and how we got to this point today, but also just like how you got involved and all of that. I think I started. I came to Fringe North, I think, in the second year. So I saw a little bit into the early stages, but of course, just from the perspective as an artist. So I'm just really curious to know how the festival got started. What did the first year look like? What did before the first year look like? It's a very broad question, but I want to know it all.
Sure. Thanks for asking, Garrett. I should start also by saying, for those who don't know me, my name is Tova Arbus. I was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie, been working theater here since I was a kid. As with many artists from Northern Ontario who want to pursue a career in the arts, I took off after high school, did my BFA at Laurentian University, and then went to Toronto to try to work as an artist. Generally speaking, that translated as a lot of free work and bartending. So I ended up back here after working with a couple different arts organizations around Ontario, working in Chapleau, working on Manitoulin Island with Debajmajig, and then kind of landed back in the Soo, feeling a little bit at loose ends and not quite sure what I was going to do with myself. While I was in Toronto, I had done a lot of work volunteering for Toronto Fringe. And I'd run into people and, as folks do, say, hey, how are you? Who are you? Where do you come from? Especially in Toronto, this is a really standard question. And when they'd find out I was from Sault Ste. Marie, I'm not kidding. I would say at least 75% of them said, oh yeah, I know Sault Ste. Marie. I drove through there on my way to do a show at this other Fringe. And it really needled me and it stuck in my brain. And when I got back to Sault Ste. Marie, I started to really chew on it a bit. And I thought, we are a border town. We are kind of that central position. If you're going east or west, there's not too many ways to get to points east or west of here without passing through Sault Ste. Marie, unless you're doing some back bush trailing, And why shouldn't those folks stop? Why shouldn't we give them a reason to stop? The other thing that was really in my brain is the fact that we have marvelous community theater happening here in Sault Ste. Marie. Starting, September through June, you can go see show, amazing talent, phenomenal shows. Really, most of them are like professional tier, and the ones that are growing into those shoes just bring so much to the table, passion and entertainment and talent. But there's nothing in the summer. Everybody locally flees to their camps, and the companies that are already working here, they weren't doing so much. They weren't willing to take on that summer. So I saw an opportunity. And I started to talk about it. And the person I talked to about it first was my dad. And anyone listening, You probably maybe don't know me, but you might know my dad. That's usually what I get, right? Oh, Arbus, are you connected to? He knows everybody. And he listened to the plan as I started to kind of spin it out to him. And he said, I have someone you should talk to. And there was a really passionate person at that time who was also quite committed to bringing Fringe here, had worked kind of for Edmonton Folk Festival, been kind of aware of Fringe festivals. And so we connected, and out of that, Fringe North was born. The first years were a lot. I don't think any of us really knew what we were doing. We kind of dove in it a little bit too fast, probably started with a festival when we needed to start with the building blocks. So we've been playing some catch up. Each year we learn a little bit more. That second year when you were there, the pieces were in place to offer the framework for artists, but we weren't reaching audiences yet. There were lots of bumps along the way, you know, and we had a very small team. Many of us wore multiple hats, but we just kept at it, and we started to get approval for funding. The first program to come on board with us was Canada Summer Jobs, and that changed everything because now we had a staff for the first time. So I worked with the festival from 2015, 2016, when we started this, birthing this thing, and till kind of towards the end of 2018, almost 2019. Wasn't around for the 2019 season, had just taken a step back, and was, when you're learning and growing, there's often differences of opinion within a team. And we had two markedly different visions that were emerging. My home life was complicated, and I just was running a bit out of steam after wearing so many hats. So I thought, you know what, I'll take a step back. We'll let this other vision kind of take a turn, if you will, and see what happens. And after the 2019 festival and then the cancellation in 2020, the board approached me and said, we're ready to have a leadership change. Would you please come back? So I did, and here we are. And we did our digital exploration last year, which was unexpected. I thought we were going to take a year off and kind of do the learning and growing that we didn't quite get to in the early days. Instead, we were really privileged to get some funding from Ontario Trillium Foundation. And so we just did it. We paid as many artists as possible, and we ran a phenomenal digital festival with some great kind of watch party engagement opportunities for those who were here in the community. And then it really allowed us to discover, what are we here to do as Fringe? And we asked that question a lot over this past year. We're not just here to, put up some festival that people come and say, that was fun. We really made a difference for artists last summer, giving them an opportunity in a time when there really weren't any. During pandemic, the arts, folks working in the arts really suffered. You know this. We saw what that meant to people to say, hey, we're going to pay you, bring forward whatever you want, whatever you're working on, no censorship, no parameters. We just have a space for you, and we're going to hold that space for you. And it meant that we could support artists who were working from behind barriers. We could support artists who were new and emerging and didn't know they were artists yet, and the whole gamut. And out of that came conversations over this past year saying that's what we really want to do. So we're shifting our focus as a team. We've gotten smaller and more intentional for this summer, but really trying to always anchor in that kind of mindful place to make sure that what we do as a festival is always, always about the people who are on the team, the people who come in as artists, and the community we build around it, bringing that intention and care into everything that we do, so that we can build a space that feels really safe for folks to come and tell their truths in the way that they want to, and have that connection point to the community they want to tell their truths to. So I'm super excited. It's been a lot to get to this point. That's kind of the Coles Notes version.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here we are.
What I noticed, I think, and I've shared this many times. I don't know if I've talked about this on the live stream specifically, but what I noticed the first year that I came to Fringe North is the level of heart that was present among the team. It was tough in terms of audience engagement for sure. I remember we were going out, and we were going into like restaurants and stuff and handing out little like flyers and all that. And a lot of people were very interested in the community, but just hadn't had the interact or hadn't come across the festival yet, which is completely fair for the second year. So I'm so happy to see things growing and developing and you know, coming into see the festival coming into its own, and but retaining that level of that heart and community focus is just so fantastic. I spoke to this morning I spoke to someone who mentioned this specifically, but I've had this conversation a few times where people have been really noting that it's been great to see that we're really holding on to the digital component after the success of last year. People have been saying how fantastic that is for accessibility, for exploration in different mediums. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that decision and how we'll see the sort of digital component remain in the festival potentially going forward.
Absolutely. I also am really excited about this kind of hybrid approach. Last year was the first experience I had as an artist and as an arts curator, if you will, with exploring the digital realm. But I'm not unfamiliar. My incredible younger sister works in, I mean, I would have always framed it under the old title of visual arts, right? But she's exploring VR, virtual reality, and the mesh between what's happening for artists in that digital realm in really exciting ways. So when we had last year's festival, we went, you know, it's not possible for us to do anything live. We don't have capacity, and it's not safe for us to do that. And we put the call out for digital. I was blown away by the incredible exploratory works, creative works that came forward from artists, many of whom were exploring the digital realm for the first time. It brought forward these lovely mashups, interdisciplinary work that we were seeing in a much different way than if someone had come and presented a live stage show. It brought forward artists who never would have applied to Fringe in the past and held a place for them. And you're right to mention accessibility, because that's really at the forefront of all of this. We had artists with disabilities and other barriers who could not come and perform at a live festival, whether because they were too far away and couldn't afford to get here, or whether because physically that just wasn't possible for them. And this meant that they had a really valuable and viable opportunity here to present themselves as an artist, to present their works, to engage with community in that meaningful, and I use the term professional when we want to pay folks, right? So in that professional way where they were getting valued, not just exposure, monetary value for what they had put together and what they were bringing forward. And it meant a lot. And I really appreciate hearing that that's the conversation you're also having, Garrett, because I've heard that as well. And I know our remarkable artistic producer this summer, Caitlin, she's gotten a lot of that feedback from artists last summer. Many folks have talked about this. So we thought, especially since things are still a bit unexpected in terms of what the future brings for us, and because we want to anchor so much in that intentional building, accessibility really needs to be a huge part of it. Mm-hmm. And inclusivity, including artists of so many different mediums, so many different realms, to really bring into the festival that dynamic and creative, unexpected content. And a lot of that is going to come from the digital realm. It means that this summer we can have stuff for folks who are all over. We sold tickets as far away as India and Australia last year. We had a young company from New Delhi who put in their dance performance to our festival. They would not have come to Sault Ste. Marie at this stage of our festival otherwise, but they were there and it was wonderful, you know, and we don't want to miss that. The artists from other places, our team who are working remotely, whose friends and families can't drive here. Gas is going to be really expensive. Like there's so many reasons why this opens up accessibility and inclusivity. And it does really interesting things even on the live side, because now there's no dead space between shows. Mm-hmm. Now you have, wow, look at this cool digital content. That's really unexpected. I've never seen anything like that. Okay, go back into a show. Come on out, see what else is happening. Having those opportunities to bring in artists who you wouldn't traditionally think of as coming to a Fringe festival. It's great. And it's so far past where I think about things from the arts. Like I'm learning and growing all the time as we include these really modern and progressive opportunities for folks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's really fantastic to see that we, as a festival, are sticking with that path. I found it very interesting when we were at, I mean, we're still in the midst of COVID for sure. Like it's still around. But when we were at the height of the pandemic, and we were sort of forced as theater makers to explore this digital realm, there was so many interesting ways people were working with the technology. I saw so much creativity, and I think it really is a shame to just say, "Oh, now we can go back. Let's throw that all out." Like keeping this sort of hybrid format is really exciting, because I think the pandemic sort of exacerbated this this move to the digital, but I think it was coming anyway. In the theater world, I like even before you know, we had to go online. Being in university, like in the last half decade, it's been very much so at the forefront of our conversations in terms of like, what is it going to look like when theater becomes VR, or when it becomes, you know, so that I think it's great that Fringe North is sticking with it and not trying to just throw it out and go back to the traditional way of doing things. Kind of switching gears a little bit. I'm interested. You have mentioned the real community focus of Fringe North, as well as sort of the regional focus within Northern Ontario broadly. I'm curious for you, what was it like growing up as an artist in Sault Ste. Marie in Northern Ontario, and what do you hope that Fringe North can provide for other artists coming up in the area, in the region, or at least what can Fringe North sort of, how can we become part of the ecosystem that is providing these opportunities that maybe you or I didn't have growing up in Northern Ontario?
Sure. Yeah. You know, I think when you're growing up in a place like Sault Ste. Marie, your bubble is only so big as your bubble is, right? And I didn't really know or understand that there was anything more than what I was doing. I also was really lucky to get involved in the arts from a young age. My parents were both really passionate about supporting community engaged arts, supporting artists, and so they would take us out to stuff. It was just part of my language that I grew up with. We would travel, we would go to art galleries, we would go to see plays. My dad especially loved to bring scripts home and discover them with us. So I didn't know that this wasn't what everybody else was doing. It's just always been part of my life. And when I was around 11 and entering that somewhat difficult to get along with stage, my dad just handed me over to a friend of his, a colleague of his, who was Susan Barber, who was a phenomenal arts practitioner, theater practitioner here in the Soo, the kind of person that reached out and saw people and said, okay, you, come on, hold this paintbrush, be third tree from the left. And she saved people's lives over and over and over again through her community focused work. So my dad handed me over to her and said, do something with this kid. So she did. And I worked props for a big musical, and that was it. You know, and that was some 75 shows ago. So I was really part of something. Community theater is interesting because it is community. And you just, when you're immersed in it and you get, you know, bit by the theater bug, as they say, and you're part of things, you have family. And I had that. I had these people around me who knew me and cared about me, and we would do this amazing work. You build a show and your whole self is in it, right? And we would do that together, and the ties that are formed through work like that, they are long lasting and deep. But I mean, I was hooked, and I didn't really know what else there was, quite frankly, besides community theater. But Sault Ste. Marie, like I said, has a really vibrant community theater scene, especially when I was young. Sioux Theater Workshop was doing, you know, youth focused stuff. There was The Sioux Youth Theater was happening. There were all these little pockets of stuff happening. And I ended up in high school getting my first paid job in theater, working at Theater in Motion's Lunchbox Theater here. And some folks may remember that. We did it out of the Algonquin Hotel in this kind of divey little bar. And every day at lunch, folks could come and buy a sandwich and watch a show. And that's what I did for a summer. And I ran their little summer camp and in partnership with the Sioux Youth Theater. And then the following summer, I worked for them again. And my mentor, Wendy Hamilton, who kind of spearheaded this idea, this project, she had been working in the arts and getting paid for it. And she always said, doesn't matter what you're doing, you deserve to get paid. Arts are valuable. And even if it's, you know, something small, something like buying you lunch, whatever it is, there should be monetary compensation because your work is valuable. That was in high school. It meant that I said yes to the passion and went to school for this. It meant that I said yes and tried to do this work when I think lots of other kids are shaped that the arts are this extra, this side hobby, something you do for fun till you outgrow it and do your real job, right? These wonderful women in my life who told me, who showed me that the arts were valuable and viable and that a person working in that realm deserved to be recognized and compensated for their work meant that fast forward to today, I can do what I'm doing and fight to make sure that artists are valued and compensated just the way they fought for me. Now looking back at it, I wish there had been more for me, right? I wish that I'd been able to, like in a big city, you can go and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to my drama class after school today. Oh, I'm going to study voice. Oh, I'm going to study some kind of body movement focused practice. I didn't do that till much, much later. And you can't regret what you don't know as a child, but I sure would have wished that there was more of that. Mm-hmm. The training, the connection, the recognition of the arts as a practice worth valuing. Mm-hmm. Not just because it's entertaining and fun and you go to support, you know, your cousin's daughter who's in a show. Yeah. But because it's meaningful, it's a meaningful part of the economy. It's a meaningful part of the success of community, of making folks say, hey, I want to live there. Arts and culture does that. That's the heartbeat of community. And we have to stand with it and say, this is valuable and viable and worth investing in. Mm-hmm.
And do you see the sort of broader community accepting the arts as a valuable part of the ecosystem, or has it been kind of a difficult sell? I know it depends on the community. From what I've found, some communities that have that arts focus really built into sort of the core of what the city's identity is, it's a very easy sell, and then some communities are completely closed off. So I know you mentioned that the Sioux has a very vibrant arts community. How does that kind of fit into the whole community ecosystem?
This one is a bit of a double-edged sword, the answer to this one, right? Because we do have a really vibrant arts and culture community here. I find that the folks who support the events that happen under that umbrella, if you will, are the same people over and over and over again. We've always been, you know, we're a steel town, we're a hockey town. Yeah. Arts were something that happened and people were kind of like, well, I know there's an art gallery and my kid does a musical sometimes, but it wasn't at the core of what we built community around here in Sault Ste. Marie, at least in my experience. And that's always what I'll talk through. It has been a struggle for folks working in arts and culture, especially in the theater realm, I think, to be recognized as contributing to building economy, building community, not just because it's fun, but in that way that means sustainability and growth, in the way that our financial leaders will talk about when they talk about community. That's been the harder sell, I think. And we're in a strange time now where people are really looking for this and want to recognize arts and culture. There's more stuff happening all the time. The city has been more vocal about this. The city, I mean, like our mayor and councillors and planners our city leadership has been more vocal about wanting to support arts and culture, and we're seeing it in small ways. So I think it's coming, and I think we're in the middle of a transition. I'm excited to be part of that with the Fringe North Festival. And one of the things that I'm lucky enough to be able to do in my realm of responsibility with this festival is to be creating those relationships. And so that's the talk I'm talking all the time, getting out there and reminding folks, hey, oh, you never heard of the festival before. Great. Have you been to Rotary Festival, which is kind of our big community festival? You did? Okay. So you went to support the arts, you went to support culture. Let's do that in other ways, right? Reminding people that we aren't just a hockey steel town anymore, and what that richness can bring forward. And there's more and more of it happening all the time. It's really wonderful. So we're growing and shifting away from where it used to be, that kind of more closed, I think, and disengaged attitude towards arts and culture. Now it's starting to kind of explode out, really, and it's going to just sweep people along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from what I've noticed anyway, the pandemic has really made people reevaluate their relationship with arts and culture. It's people not noticing what they have until they don't have it anymore. So once, the opportunities to go see theater and go experience art in any way were taken away, people realized how much of an impact it had on their mental health, on their physical health, spiritual health, all of those things, and how valuable it is for the communities. And I think in Northern Ontario specifically, it's becoming more and more valuable as the sort of traditional industries, like you mentioned, Sault Ste. Marie is a steel town. These traditional industries that really built up Northern Ontario into what it is today are kind of disappearing. We need these arts and cultural institutions more than ever.
Absolutely, and a really great model for this that I always talk about is what happened in Hamilton. And they were very industry based, and industry was failing. And there was a period of time where it really looked like Hamilton was going to go the way of some of our smaller northern towns, where it just disappears and everybody leaves, and you're left with a really small community out of what was once really vibrant, based in this resource rich, industry rich space. And the leadership in Hamilton said, okay, what could we do differently? And accepted this proposal. And I'm not quite sure how it all came to, you hear it from the periphery, right? But what it seemed like from the outside is that there was a really passionate group of folks who said, we got to bring things back to the heart. What's the heart of community? Arts and culture. And they essentially rebranded their city as an arts and culture city. And it's working.
Yeah.
Artists flocked from Toronto to live and work in Hamilton, and the city grew and became so vibrant. And now when I talk to people and they say, oh, if you could live anywhere else, where would you live? Hamilton's the top of so many lists. And this is why, right? Arts and culture connects people, and it builds community, this rich, engaged community, in a much different way than any sort of industry or resource-based direction can do. There's no heart in that. There might be money, there might be jobs, but that's, at the end of the day, you go home to your family and you say, okay, what are we really going to do? It's not work, right? And it can't be. So I'm hopeful that this shift that's happening here will embrace some of that. Then there's other communities that did, I used Hamilton as an example, but there are many. And I hope that Sault Ste. Marie is one of them. We're seeing some shifts happening in Sudbury. We're hearing great things about what's happening farther north in Thunder Bay. I know there's cool stuff happening in North Bay, and it's just like it's burbling. The energy is there. And you're right to point out what is coming after the pandemic. People want more. They want connection, and they want heart in community. This is where it comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the communities in the North, especially during the pandemic, I haven't been to Sault Ste. Marie, so it's been a few years since I've actually been there in person. But I'm frequently in North Bay and Sudbury, which is the places where I primarily grew up. And there's a lot of hurt and pain that have come with a lot of the job loss, the economic situation, a lot of issues of addiction and violence, and I think those communities need the arts and culture more than ever. And I think it's a great example bringing up Hamilton, because even my perception of Hamilton has shifted so much since I was a kid. I have some family there, so I grew up going to Hamilton a lot, and I had a very similar perception of like being in Hamilton that I do being in North Bay or Sudbury, where it had this kind of like downtrodden, like once potentially rich community, like more economically viable community, kind of on downtrodden, struggling, and now when I go visit, it has this vibe that's almost the vibe that I associate with like Fringe festivals. I mean, Hamilton does have a very good Fringe festival, but just like this kind of like indie, artsy, fringy kind of vibe going. There's so much cool local independent art stuff popping up. I know several people who make art in Hamilton, and you're right that city is completely changing its image in a lot of ways. So I would love to see that for Northern Ontario as well, for the Northern Ontarian cities. Yeah, very, very interesting. So I want to kind of shift a little bit once again. I'm curious for you as an artist, because I think this is a really important question that I like to ask, and I think this is probably going to be meaningful and relevant for a lot of artists. What does your sort of work-life balance look like in terms of an artist? Being a parent, and being so busy and so, like you said, having so many hats on in terms of your artistic work. How do you, what is your process for doing that look like? Because traditionally, theater especially has been very difficult to be a parent, and I have friends that are working in theater, working in other areas of the arts, that have been noticing a lot of shifts in the way we talk about raising a family as a working artist, and I'm wondering if that has sort of reached Sault Ste. Marie yet, and how you've sort of experienced all of those things as an artist and as a parent.
That's a great question. I started laughing when you asked it, because I really don't know yet what balance feels like.
Right.
I mentioned a bit earlier in the conversation that this summer our artistic producer, is a woman named Caitlin. That was a hat that I had been wearing in previous years, among all the other things, was this kind of artistic director producer hybrid role. And sitting on the board and helping plan the festival and promoting and all the things, right? And my family suffered when I stepped back at the end of 2018. It was because I did not have any balance. I would drag my little kids out to everything that I was doing. We spent so much time. I didn't drive at the time, so we were like walking downtown, handing out things, going to events, doing the schmooze. I would be up late writing grants and trying to figure out funding stuff. And I disappeared from my family life. I'm really blessed. I've got a very supportive family and good village around me. But it took stepping back and taking that break to realize, okay, can't do it all, and can't only give everything you have in one space, because then, I don't know, this old adage, right? You can't, where are you filling your cup from? And so coming back this time, last year was when I stepped back in, I had thought that what was going to happen was we were going to take a year to reflect and pause and move through this transition in kind of a calm and simple way. And that didn't happen. Thanks to our wonderful funding, we just dove right into festival life almost immediately when I came back on. And I was artistic producer for last year, as well as president of the board, and all the other pieces. Well, we just acknowledge that we were still really a baby in terms of the foundation of our organization. And there were so many things we didn't know. So then I'm learning and training and trying to connect with other fringes. And I could feel myself slipping back into that obsessive state where Fringe consumed me. And it meant that I wasn't successful in my work. I wasn't getting stuff done. I had no space for myself as an artist. I was just producing, which doesn't fill my cup. And my family was losing because of it. I was not a connected parent. I was not a patient parent when I get in that. A little different if I do a show, right? It's a short term, but not with this ongoing project. And so that was something I really had to acknowledge. And I was lucky to have two phenomenal folks on the team. We were small kind of in the off season, but Caitlin, who I mentioned, and our EDI focus person, Nicole, who just said to me, hey, we see you not able to do everything. And so out of it came this kind of shift. And I've really stepped back this summer to occupy just one space and try to do it well as president and focus on kind of building and growing our board into something sustainable and stable. And to really focus on achieving that balance so that I am carving out specific time to say, okay, this is my work time, and have something for the kids to do that isn't them just hanging around, being bored or getting into mischief, where then I resent their presence, right? Having some things that mean they're busy in the evenings with my partner, so then I can focus on some work, and saying no to some things, saying I don't have capacity for this. And I've had to really practice that, bring that into a practice, saying no, recognizing what I have capacity for, and putting limits on how much I say yes to. Markedly contrasting, trying to do it all before, and I actually get stuff done now. And I mostly meet my deadlines. And when I can't, there's, a better process for why or why not things are happening, rather than me just saying, I don't even know that I was supposed to be doing that anymore because it fell off the table. So it feels better. And it meant that other folks within the team could rise. And I think that a really good leader of any community has to hold space for the folks who are coming up, and it was really hard for me to let go. I've got the whole festival planned up here in my head, like as if I'm doing it all, and I just have to step back this year because I don't need all this.
Yeah.
You folks who are on the team, and Caitlin and everybody who's on the team, I just get to fan those flames, and it's wonderful because with me stepping aside to hold space for others to rise, it means that our festival is growing and shifting and becoming this really beautiful thing that I could not have done on my own. So that was an important lesson for me to learn as an artist, as a person, recognizing that when you do step back and slow down, it leaves room for growth and enrichment that would never have happened otherwise. And you miss that. You miss it. For artists, especially, I think we just go all the time. If you don't, maybe then you don't have an income, right? If you don't, maybe they forget about you when the next person comes up. If you don't, then they won't cast you, and you don't have a show, and you don't have the funding and all the things. But in those times of stillness, when we remind ourselves that stepping back, taking a breath is part of what we are as artists, it brings to light so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very hard thing to do. I 100% agree. I remember when I was starting off doing festivals and doing shows, there was at least 2 or 3 years when we were doing 2 shows each summer that I would be involved in. And I remember one year we had an issue with one of our directors in terms of travel. So I kind of had to fill in as a director. So I was directing 2 shows at the same time, like sometimes rehearsals overlapping in like the same space. And I remember the summer, I think that was actually maybe the year that I did Fringe North. I think it might've been. And I remember by the end of that summer, I was like physically ill. Like I was like getting colds, and like my immune system was down. And like I had the perception of like, oh no, I just have to like keep fighting and pushing past it because that's what you have to do to be a successful artist. And I'm definitely still guilty of that mentality all of the time. I'm still always doing that kind of thing. But I'm at least more aware of what I have to do to feel better now. It is just stepping back sometimes. And I used to have a tendency to accept any project that was someone said, hey, do you want to help with this? This might be cool. And I'd say, yeah. And now I have to learn to say no to certain things. And that has been very, very good for me, for sure. I'm curious, have you found, do you have time for anything else outside of like any hobbies that outside of the arts, and have you found that has sort of helped with that balance? Because I have found that having other interests that are at least as separate as possible, because everything filters back into theater for me, but at least as separate as I can make it, have really helped have some kind of a stronger balance between work and life. So I don't know, is there anything else that you like to do kind of on the side that helps with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I really support and echo what you said of how important it is to have other things.
Mm-hmm.
For me too, it all comes back down to theater. And, you know, I'll be doing other pieces in my life. And I'm always thinking like, oh, this could be a show. Oh, this actually makes me think that over here I could plan this day. So there's always that connection. I don't ever really turn that off. But I am a passionate gardener, and I love the kind of physicality of getting out there. Sometimes it's just, you know, I'm just digging and dirty and moving things, and you're just so involved in that, right? And it's one of the few times that I can turn my brain off and I'm not thinking about all the million things. So that's been really, that's really important for me. Obviously in Northern Ontario, that's a bit of a seasonal thing, but I also have an indoor jungle that I maintain. Putting my hands in the dirt, dusting the leaves, repotting a plant, like that's my Zen time. And it's really one of the few things that I can do where I can turn my brain off. Yoga is another one. I'm out of my practice right now, but it's one that I do try to feel committed to. And just making sure that I get outside in whatever the weather, whatever it is. And it's wonderful being a mother in that respect, because we center our whole, I homeschool with the kids, and we center our whole kind of educational learning discovery stuff around nature and being outside. And it makes me go out pretty much every day. And often then, you know, with my two very busy boys, it means that we're running and exploring and building and climbing, and that physicality, it comes up for me in gardening, it comes up in a yoga practice. That's when I can separate and stop from all the head and heart work that the arts require. Yeah. So that's really important to me as well. And I'm grateful to have the privilege of those pieces in my life. Yeah,
absolutely. Gardening is a fantastic sort of separation piece, because you're right in saying that I love to read, and I often will do that as my sort of like taking a step back from theater, but then sometimes I'll be reading something and go, oh, this could be a cool play. So it's not a full separation. I think that kind of like tactile, it's not necessarily turning your creative side off, but just like it's kind of working different parts of your brain and doing something like gardening. So that's great. I'm curious if your boys are, I don't know exactly how old they are, or if they're at the place for this yet, but do they have an interest in the arts as well? Do you think they're gonna go in and do some theater or any other kind of art?
They have to. No, I'm just kidding. They're 5 and 8, turning 6 and 9, and really their own people at this point. I mean, this is a bit of an easy yes, because my opinion is that all children are creative and artists. And we don't always hold space for that. There's not always room for them to understand that that's what's happening or to explore that. But fundamentally, I mean, we are all innately artists at our core. And children and their imaginations and their just readiness to say yes. When we do improvisational games and stuff, that's the first rule, right? You know, it's like, you just say yes. You're with a partner, you're doing a scene. Okay, say yes. Say yes to everything. And that's how you drive it forward, right? And kids say yes.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, in my own learning and growing, I was lucky to understand that. And coming into things as a parent, I just said, okay, I'm just going to set up enough provocations that they can explore that. So we have a huge overflowing cabinet of different, different craft type materials, different building materials that they can, if they want to sit down and physically create, they can do that. My youngest one loves to make concoctions in the kitchen, and he doesn't know how to cook. I don't call it cooking, but it's this wonderful, like sometimes it turns out to be a sculpture. Sometimes it turns out to be paint that he's created or something tactile that you're like, oh, look, you made a food collage here, So I see that as art. We have dress up clothes and masks, and especially my youngest one, he's very drawn to putting on costumes. I gave him my mother and I got him a bunch of face paint. He can just free form whatever he wants to do. So some mornings he wakes up, paints his face, he puts on a costume, and he lives that for at least part of the day. And just leaving room for that. My older one is a reader. And then what he reads comes forward, and I see him creating these elaborative imagination games with his brother. Well, he's a little director, and I recognize that because of the work that I do. Otherwise, you just say, oh, that's kids playing, right? But I see these pieces that I go, you would be successful here. And oh, that would be really beautiful here, and I will absolutely be bringing them out to explore and try theater. I'm hoping that I've got some kind of threads out there that I'm hoping will pull forward. So through Fringe, we can offer some learning and discovery opportunities for youth in the fall, perhaps connecting with like the Northern Arts Academy, who does youth focused training here in the Sioux, and the kids just have to come. And if they say no to me, this isn't their thing, that's fine. But our rule is you always just try something, right? I'm really excited to see where they connect to, because I see it in both of them. And I'm looking forward to that coming out.
That's so great. That's so exciting. My plan, I really look forward to having kids one day, and that's one of the most exciting things to me is just seeing how, fingers crossed, they develop as artists. But you're right, anything can be quantified as art. So however they develop their creativity, it's so special seeing that in youth. Absolutely. I'm interested. You mentioned the sort of youth training and stuff that's going on in the Sioux, and your interest in that. I'd be interested to know a little bit about some of the programming and work that Fringe North is doing outside of festival season, because I know there's been some programs for developing artists going on. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and then also maybe what you would like to see in terms of that sort of thing with yourself and with Fringe North in the future, in terms of programs for developing artists, youth, emerging artists, that sort of thing.
Sure. So this past off season, kind of leading into where we are now, really we just put funding behind other projects that were happening. So we supported a digital show and tell. There was this 3-day series where we invited artists to come and tell their stories. And it was very centered in musical arts. So we had a few musicians who came forward, like singer-songwriters, performers. And so they did kind of a podcast interview and then shared some of what they're working on. We also supported Hip Hop Healing, which is an youth-led group. I'm a bit of a step away from it, so I won't try to explain too much about what they're doing, but through the art of spoken word and hip hop, diving into how we tell our stories for healing and to create those safe spaces. And it's youth-led and youth-focused. There's a lot of strong Indigenous voices in there. And and other, BIPOC artists. And we just said, yeah, let us support you to make sure that this happens, right? So I love to do stuff like that to make it possible for especially other young and emerging artists, especially BIPOC artists, to get out there and be doing what they need to do. Everybody tries to do it anyways, but if we can help with funding and support, resources, promotion, that sort of thing, that's top tier for me. That's always a priority. On my bookshelf of ideas, I carry around that one day, one of the things Fringe will do when we're not in festival season is really centered around education, learning and discovery. And so what I hope that translates to is a few things: that we have programming for youth and emerging artists, that we have programming that will center around self-care and how to nurture yourself as an artist, how to take care of yourself as an artist, and how to be an artist in terms of the business of that, right? And for me, these two things come hand in hand, because you care for yourself, you care for your business, right? And then your business grows. And if you don't care for it, your business fails. And that's a really simplified version. I'm not saying that that's always what happens, but in this context, right? So same thing, you, the artist, are a business. So what are the things you need? Well, you need to understand your craft. You need to be able to support yourself, and you need to be able to care for yourself and keep yourself safe and healthy so that you can continue to be that business, right? And so I hope that we can offer programming that supports some of that. And then the third kind of tier of this, if you will, is that I hope that we can offer programming that excites and encourages artists into becoming fringe artists. How do you do that? How do you fringe? What does it take? How do you build a show? So that'll mean things like director workshops, acting masterclass, technical training for folks who are like, well, I don't want to get on stage, but I'll, learn to run your lights, that sort of stuff, so that we can continue to grow community around the festival and have all these pieces where now there's people saying, oh yeah, I actually do know how to do that. And I do know how to promote so that I have enough people coming out and it feels like a successful fringe for me. And that I can take what I've learned and go to other fringes and go to other cities and now feel part of something instead of just, well, I did a little show in Sault Ste. Marie and it's a closed loop. I want to blow the doors off. And for me, that comes out of learning and training, right? Understanding stuff that I figured out the hard way. For a lot of it, and just be really supporting youth and emerging artists into conceptualizing themselves as artists, as viable, valuable artists. And I say that all the time. So this is my little key messaging right here, if you will, that they can get it, and that they feel like they've got tools in their toolkit to reach back to and say, okay, I do know how to do this. And that when they realize they're missing a tool, they know where to come to pick it up.
Yeah. And in terms of the festival itself, what is your ideal Fringe North in, let's say, a decade? It's very far away, especially in terms of Fringe North. I mean, that's more than double the time I think the festival's been around. We're on our sixth year?
About 6 year, yeah.
6 years. So it's very far in the future. But if all, let's say, in the ideal, perfect world,
that when the festival comes around every summer, that the whole city gets excited, and that this becomes Fringe Town for a week or a weekend or whatever it is, right? That we have a vibrancy in the downtown, that people come down, that there's vendors and street performers, buskers, the lay term, that we have a great children's village where there's shows and activities and, workshops happening, that we have the cultural corridor lit up so that folks can know that they're going to come down, they're going to see a show, they're going to visit the museum, they're going to come back out, they're going to go over to our old stone house and take in what that heritage center has to offer. And then maybe they're going to see buskers on the lawn, that people come from across Northern Ontario and points farther and plan to be here for Fringe, and that the city, I think I said this already, but that the city just lights up around the festival, and that people see that there's theater and art and culture happening, boom, 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 around it. If you're ever here for Rotary Festival, this is what happens. The whole town, everybody comes back in from camp, everybody's there, everybody's talking about Rotary, and there's just this feel in the air, right? That's what I want.
Yeah.
And I want to bring in fabulous theater from all over the place. I want the Fringe artists who reach out to us sometimes from the Fringe circuit to make us a stop that they come to with excitement, the same way they would go somewhere like Montreal or Toronto.
Mm.
And I think what we have to offer here, obviously we're smaller, but we offer, because of it, we offer opportunities for folks to really tell their stories their way and to build in their own truth telling in a way that's different than what happens at bigger festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really hope that one of the things we do well at Fringe North is centering voices that need to be heard. And I'm talking about Indigenous voices. I'm talking about other persons of color. I'm talking about persons living with disabilities. I'm talking about queer folks. I'm talking about folks who are every day fighting to center their own voices. And I really, we're lucky we're a young Fringe, right? So we can do that right from the get-go. What I want is to build a space that makes people feel safe and know that they can come here and say the things they need to say. And that we really hold community and hold space for folks. And out of that will come that Fringe North helps to champion and center these necessary voices and helps to break down barriers to accessing the arts and to working in the arts. That's really important to me.
Yeah.
So there's these two fundamental pieces of it that will have to happen hand in hand: the community engagement and connection, and that buy-in from our community local and community that will come here, and then that artist support.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. And I think from my perspective, this is my first year working for the Fringe, but from my perspective as well, watching the Fringe develop, I think we're headed on the right track for that. So I will be here. Hopefully I will keep being involved somehow with the festival in 10 years time, and I will be following and championing the success of the festival. That's it's really exciting to see what's happening and what your vision is for what the festival could develop into. So I want to just noticing the time, we should wrap up in a minute, but I want to end with another kind of broad question, but so feel free to answer this however you want. But for me, one of the things that I love about Fringe, and especially Fringe North and other smaller fringes, is like I mentioned earlier, it's the heart that is built into the festival, into the community that puts on the festival. So I was wondering if you could share maybe a particular moment of the festival at any point throughout the years that has resonated with you the most, like a particularly special moment that has really sort of encapsulated what this festival means and has meant and can mean. It doesn't have to be the quote unquote most special, but just something you can offer that really helps encapsulate that kind of Fringe feeling.
That is an excellent question, and I'm going to be thinking about this long after our conversation today. But there are two things that immediately come to mind, two moments to share. The first one is a moment that happened, I think it was our second year, the year that you were here, because we were working at the Windsor Park Hotel for folks who are local, transformed that space into double whammy Bach theater, and it was so good. I don't know what's happening with that center right now, but if one of you is listening who's connected with the Windsor Park, please call me because we want back in. Okay, so that year we had a show that was here, and it was all about It was called Street Heart by a phenomenal Indigenous playwright and arts creator based in Sudbury, Sarah Garchor, and she brought this story here, telling the stories of folks who are houseless, folks who live urban, who live on the streets, and she said to me, "We don't turn anybody away. Please make sure we promote at the soup kitchen, at the community kitchens, at the shelter. If someone comes and they want to see the show, I don't care about tickets, they come in." And someone did come. The kind of someone that I think we're conditioned to feel nervous about, the kind of someone that makes many people cross the street. The kind of someone who you're not quite sure if they're speaking to you or to someone in a different realm. But he managed to make clear that he was there to see this show. "She told me to come," he says. "She told me to come, so I'm here. This is where I needed to be." My volunteers were not sure what to think, and I was glad that I was around, because I think they probably would have said, "Sorry, like you need a ticket," and because it wasn't comfortable for them. And so I said, "Okay, come on in." And so we found him a seat, and he came in, and he listened to some of it, and he slept through some of it. And at the end, when he left, he said, "Well," he said, "now that was a peaceful time. I haven't had that in a while." And then he went on his way. And it was so humbling and so heart-wrenching to consider that this person might never again access the arts in the way that we had offered. And that what it gave them was this time to just be and connect in a way that wasn't confronting, in a way that wasn't aggressive, in a way that didn't cause the person on the other side of the connection to feel fearful, to just be and be in their peace. That really stuck with me. And when we talk about access to the arts now, I always think about that man. And I always think about the ways that we can continue to welcome into our spaces, where we curate shows, where we put on festivals, where we offer artistic content. How do we bring in folks that are challenging to connect with, that are confronting for many people, and that are left out? What does that mean? And how does it shift the work that we're doing? And I hope that that always centers the conversations we're having, so we don't forget. And we don't turn into one of those arts organizations that's so focused on the money coming in that we forget about accessibility and inclusivity. Partly why I chose Fringe as a model instead of saying, I just want to do a theater festival. Because of that commitment to accessible, affordable theater for everyone. And this is a global Fringe mandate, so it really, that was a nice one to plug into. The other moment that I'm thinking about is kind of bookending that one. And I'm trying to think what year that was. Maybe year one. And we kind of bit off more than we could chew. We ran 4 venues, plus a kids stage, plus a busker stage. We had a huge turnout for Artist Call. My wonderful, my technical director, who can just do it all, carried us that year, Rob Rock. So we had set up a space at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, and I had it all built in my head that this was going to work. And then we came in and realized, oh, I didn't think about there are these 2 pillars in the middle of the room. That means no matter where we set up the stage, someone's behind this pillar. So we set and reset and moved the stage, and my poor volunteers dragged risers back and forth like 20 times. And I was kind of pulling my hair out. And we finally figured out a way to do it so that everybody could see, but it meant our stage was really small. Smaller than what we had promised artists, and unexpectedly so, because it kind of happened at the last minute. And we got it set, we hung our curtains and we hung our lights and we got everything in. And then in came this show, and the artist who was performing kind of grumbled a bit and said, I don't even know if we're going to have space for our show in what you've given us. So I apologized, profusely. And what do you do, right? And showtime comes and the audience comes in. And because it's smaller, it looked full. We had bums in most of the seats. And because it was smaller, they were right there with the performers on the stage. And lights went up and the show started. And I sat at the back of that theater space we created. And I went, I could be at any Fringe, anywhere. This is on par with what happened in Toronto. And the show was phenomenal. And I felt that energy in the room. And for anyone who's been to a Fringe festival or been to see, you know, non-professional theater in unexpected spaces, or even a big show in Toronto that just moves you, right? There's this feeling that happens, and it happened that day. And I was exhausted because we didn't have any money that year, and I was doing too many things. And my counterpart was really focused on kind of the music and kids Fringe side of things. So I was running all the theater essentially myself, and with great volunteers and our TV and everybody, like not alone, you know, but it felt like it was just me, and I was exhausted, and I didn't even know what we were offering folks anymore. And this show happened, and it was magic. And everybody who was there went, oh, wow, you know, and they left. And it was exactly what we'd been trying to do. And that was the shift for me, where I went, okay, we can do this and we can make this work. And this is real.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing both of those things. That's fantastic. And exactly what I was looking for with that question. That's so great. There is such a magic that comes with Fringe, and I think both of those stories really encapsulate that magic. So thank you so much for sharing. And I guess we're at our time, so we'll wrap it up here. Even though we could probably go on for another while chatting about some of this stuff, but thank you so much for being here today. This has been a great talk, and I think hopefully really insightful for people to learn more about our festival and how it came to be. And it's been very insightful for me as well. I didn't know a lot of this background stuff. So this has been great.
Garrett, I really appreciated the conversation today, and your great deep dive questions definitely made me remember some pieces of why we're doing this that I had shelved. So thank you for that. I always like to end with a call to action for anybody who's listening. Fringe is always community. And we can't do that without folks around us. So if you're listening, if you're curious, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear ideas on what kind of a festival you would like to see happening here, on opportunities that we might be missing that you see, on ways that we can shift or grow, especially when it comes to accessibility. If you're an artist and you want to get involved and you're not sure how, reach out to us. Reach out to me. This is the conversations I love to have, and we can help you shape your Fringe experience. And if you don't know how to be involved but want to support what we're doing, please consider tipping the Fringe. You can throw us even your pocket change, whatever it is. We run our tickets, our ticket sales 100% go back to pay the artist, which means that we rely on funding and community support. If you love us and want to see us continue year after year, please support us in the ways that you can. Tell everybody you know, throw us your pocket change, whatever that feels like for you. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. This festival truly couldn't run without the support of the community. If there's anyone listening that has any sort of connection to an organization, a store that might want to be involved in some sponsorship or partnership opportunities, please reach out as well to the festival. We have a very exciting sponsorship package that we've developed this year. We're doing a lot of really cool things. Not all of it entails necessarily like a financial sponsorship. We have a whole bunch of different opportunities and ways to get involved. So definitely reach out if you're interested. And as well, please follow our social media. We will be doing roundtable sessions like this every Thursday up until the festival. We're also doing, once again this season, a series of artist podcasts which have been being filmed as of recently. I've already done a few of them. They're very exciting. We have some really interesting artists that are involved this year. So check out those podcast interviews. You're gonna learn a lot about the artists that are making up our festival, and they're really interesting people. And as well, our tickets go on sale August 1st, and the festival is August 18th to the 21st. So keep your eyes out for that. We will be talking a lot about that on our social media as well, I'm sure. But you can also find out more information on our brand new website, which is siouxfringe.com. And I think that's everything that I have to share. So thank you so much once again, Tova, for being here. And we will be back next Thursday. So I will see you all then. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Garrett. Take care.